Okay, once again, good morning, everyone, and we'll begin with Gasho. So please join me in Gasho. Naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs. So, are you all able to hear me? Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. So we will begin with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the recitation of the name of the Buddha or the Nembutsu. Please join me in Gasho. Naman nobs, 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 naman nobs. So next we will be reciting the three treasures. And I'm just going to pull it up on the screen here. If you don't have it, you should be able to see it on the screen now. Okay. In our Seiten, I believe it's on page 10. So we'll begin with the reading of the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we are hearing them. If we do not gain emancipation in the present life, we may not be free from sorrow in the ocean of births and deaths. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures. We go to the Buddha for guidance. We value the ideals to strive for a higher consciousness. Everyone? We go to the Buddha for guidance. We value the ideals to strive for a higher consciousness. We go to the Dharma for guidance. We value the harmony of the oneness of life. We go to the Dharma for guidance. We value the harmony of the oneness of life. We go to the Sangha for guidance. We value the love and compassion of our family and friends. We go to the Sangha for guidance. We value the love and compassion of our family and friends. Thank you. Oh, it's a little different from the one we have in the text, so I apologize for that, Lisa. Next, we will have the sutra chanting, and we will be chanting the Junyirai, which I have put up on the screen for those at home. And the Junyirai in the purple Seiten is on page 63. Naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs. Keshu teni shokugyo amina senyo zokuson zai mi me wanako muryo bushi shui ne konji gishin 行女造部両目上脈小蓮華古賀長来弥陀尊面前上如満月以降有如千日月少女天空くしら古賀長来弥陀尊観音頂戴観地宇宙主寿名相将軍信福下道負け馬大賀長来弥陀尊無微無垢交渉上修徳家受けず女国小差利悪徳自在古賀長来弥陀尊自門名門菩薩衆無量上魔上三那一生主上願力事大賀長来弥陀尊根体保険地所下前後上上名大座大い座上如戦の大賀長来弥陀尊自門上来上部し権限人図し安楽戦後尊厳上具行大賀長来弥陀尊小無常無願道薬如水月年よろ一種専門無名字大賀長来弥陀尊一尊無説無悪名薬無如に悪の主に死死行一尊大賀長来弥陀尊一尊無量勉強無所主悪知識往生不退死亡内古賀長来弥陀尊我せず依存具独自修善無 에세 슈쇼쇼히고 간이싱은 엉을 면허세이사이 너는 모나이신 오저 Nomanops. So now I'd like to continue on. Just close this window. I'd like to just continue on with my Dharma talk. And I'm going to read a passage actually from what is known as the Tanisho, the notes, a record in lament of divergence. If you have the purple Seitan, you can actually find this passage on what page was it? Oh, I've got it right here. On page 149 of the purple Seitan. And on the collected works of Shinran, it's on page 670. This is a passage from the Tanisho, and I'd like to begin by reading it. It's a little bit long, so please bear with me. On the assertion, people who are unafraid of committing evil because of the inconceivable working of the primal vow are in fact impudently presuming upon the vow and therefore will not attain birth. This is a statement of one who doubts the primal vow and fails to understand the influence of good and evil karma of past lives. Good thoughts arise in us through the prompting of good karma from the past, and evil comes to be thought and performed through the working of evil karma. The late master said, "Know that every evil act done, even as slight as a particle on the tip of a strand of rabbit's fur or sheep's wool, has its cause in past karma." Further, the master once asked, "Yuiembo, do you accept all that I say?" "Yes, I do," I answered. "Then will you not deviate from whatever I tell you?" he repeated. I humbly affirmed this. Thereupon he said, "Now I want you to kill 1,000 people. If you do, you will definitely attain birth." I responded, "Though you instruct me thus, I'm afraid it is not in my power to kill even one person." "Then why did you say that you would follow whatever I told you?" he continued. "By this, you should realize that if we could always act as we wished, then when I told you to kill 1,000 persons in order to attain birth, you should have immediately done so. But since you lack the karmic cause inducing you to kill even a single person, you do not kill. It is not that you do not kill because your heart is good. In the same way, a person may wish not to harm anyone and yet end up killing 100 or 1,000 people. Thus he spoke of how we believe that if our hearts are good, then it is good for birth. And if our hearts are evil, it is bad for birth. Failing to realize that it is by the inconceivable working of the vow that we are saved. There was in those days a person who had fallen into wrong views. He asserted that since the vow was made to save the person who had committed evil, one should purposely do evil as an act for attaining birth. As rumors of misdeeds gradually spread, Shinran wrote in a letter, "Do not take a liking to poison just because there is an antidote." This was in order to put an end to the wrong understanding. It by no means implies that evil can obstruct one's attainment of birth. He also said, if it were only by observing precepts and upholding rules that we could entrust ourselves to a primal vow, how could we ever gain freedom from birth and death? Even such wretched beings as ourselves, on encountering the primal vow, come indeed to presume upon it. But even so, how could we commit evil acts without any karma cause in ourselves? The Master further stated, those who make their living drawing nets or fishing in the seas and rivers, and those who sustain their lives hunting bears or taking fowl in the fields and mountains, and those who pass their lives conducting trade or cultivating fields and paddies, it is all the same. If the karmic cause so prompts us, we will commit any kind of act. These days, however, one finds people making a show of themselves as seekers for the afterlife, posting notices at Nembutsu practice halls saying that those who have committed such and such acts may not enter, as though only good persons should say the Nembutsu. Are not people who do this indeed outwardly expressing signs of wisdom, goodness, or diligence, while inwardly embracing falsity? Even the evil we commit while presuming upon the vow occurs through the prompting of past karma. Thus, other power lies in entrusting ourselves wholly to the primal vow while leaving both good and evil to karmic recompense. The Essentials of Faith alone states, do you know what power Amida possesses? When you say that because you are a being of karmic evil, you cannot be saved? Since you have even a heart that presumes upon the primal vow, the mind of entrusting yourselves to other power becomes all the more firmly settled. If you entrusted yourself to the primal vow only after completely ridding yourself of karmic evil and blind passions, then there would be no need for presuming upon the vow. But to rid yourself of blind passions is to become a Buddha. And for one who is already a Buddha, the vow that arose from 5 kalpas of profound thought would be to no purpose. People who admonish others against presuming upon the primal vow themselves appear to be possessed of blind passions and defilements. Does not this condition itself imply presuming upon the vow? What kind of evil is meant by presuming upon the vow, and what kind not? Rather, is not this entire line of argument the product of immature thinking? Very long passage indeed. Actually, the reason why I read this passage was actually just for the middle part. This is actually a little bit of a addendum to my last week's talk. As you recall, last week I gave a talk on a person emailing me, asking me about praying, as she had been praying for a couple of her friends who had cancer. And so I read a passage last week that talked about the fact that we as Jodo Shinshu followers, we don't do what's called petitionary praying. And where petitionary praying is the praying for the well-being of in this present life, whether it be the gain of wealth, the gain of health, etc., etc. And I also mentioned how that in speaking with a Christian minister, that they had told me, or he had told me, that in fact this form of petitionary praying was one of the base forms of praying in Christianity, and that the true Christian prayer is to accept the will of God. So that meant regardless of whether your wishes in this world may not come true, like the retainment of health, but if they accept the will of God, then whatever happens, they were okay, right? So I had mentioned this last week, and I said that there were similarities with our Nembutsu teachings in that we say we leave it up to the workings of the Amida Buddha, or we awaken to the workings of Amida Buddha. But subsequent to that service, I received another email from a different person, this time a person who had attended last week's service, and who was actually raised as a Catholic. And she pointed out something that I did not mention last week, and I thank her for pointing it out, was that in the Christian, her understanding was that in Christianity, though, there is still a God who judges at the end of the day. And her understanding was that in Buddhism, Amida is not a judgmental being. There's not a third power out there that is judging and overseeing or looking at us. And it is true, I think, that when we talk about Amida Buddha, we don't talk about this being that is outside of ourselves, but in fact, it is like understanding that we are part of a much greater universe. We are part of a whole. And when we understand this, then the understanding that we have becomes a little bit different. And so how we view Amida Buddha, and the analogy that I often use, is like when we look out at the stars at night. And one way of looking at it is pointing to the stars out there and saying the universe is out there. The stars are out there. That's one way of looking at it, and that's a way of looking at it as this, somehow the stars or the universe is separate from where I am. The other way of understanding is I am actually within the universe. This earth is part of the stars. We are a star, or part of the galaxy itself. So it's not out there, but we are actually within the universe. So I think there's a little bit of a difference in nuance and understanding. And I think for us, awakening to the workings of Amida Buddha is similar to this understanding that, yes, I am part of a greater oneness of life. I am part of a universality that exists. And so when I was thinking about this, this passage from the Tanisho came to mind. And as I was thinking of this, I just happened to be watching, I think it was CNN. You know, it's funny, we live in Canada, and yet I'm sure many of us get caught up in the politics that are going on in the States. But on CNN, there was, you know, they often show these Trump rallies that are going on and how people are going to it without their masks on or social distancing. And they were interviewing one individual, and the lady said something like that she is not afraid of getting the coronavirus, because she said if she is to get it, well, that's the will of God. Okay, and so what I thought about this when I heard this is that this passage from Shinran Shonin So in the time of Shinran, there were individuals, as in this passage, it starts off, what this Tanisho, the notes lamenting the divergencies, it's a small book, actually, of 18 chapters that was written by the disciple of Shinran Shonin. His name was Yu Yenbo. And it was actually written a number of years after Shinran had passed away. Okay? And for many, many centuries, it was actually seemed as a non-essential, not that important a writing, because it wasn't written directly by Shinran. But in the 1800s, late 1800s, there was a Higashi Honganji scholar by the name of Manshi Kiyozawa. And he was the one that pointed out that, in fact, this is a very, very important writing. And of these 18 chapters, the first 10 chapters, we consider the direct words of Shinran. Even though it was written by Yu Yenbo, we look at it as the words of Shinran. And then the last 8 chapters, what it is that Yu Yenbo was pointing out, after Shinran had passed away, there was many different interpretations of the understanding of the teachings. And so Yu Yenbo will point out some erroneous, or what he believed to be erroneous understandings, and then he would say, to this, Master Shinran used to say this, okay? And this chapter 13 is probably one of the most famous chapters within the Tanisho, just because of its, the way it's written. It's like a slap in the face, if you will, okay? But it starts off by saying that there are those who, there were some people that believed at the time, at this period, that because it is said that the working of Amida is particularly for what they quote-unquote titled the evil being, that there were people that thought we should go out and do evil acts because those are the people that the primal vow is working for, right? And to this, Shinran cautioned them, saying that don't drink poison just because there's an antidote, right? So when I heard this lady at this Trump rally saying it's the will of God, this thought came to my mind: don't drink poison just because there's an antidote, right? Even if you're a Christian and you might think, oh, there's a will of God, doesn't mean you have to be stupid or excuse my language, I shouldn't say that, ignorant in how we behave in our daily life. We know the science says that wearing a mask is beneficial. I'm not wearing one because there's only 2 other people in the Hondo here, and they're, I think, far enough away. But so, it doesn't mean that, so Shinran himself also said, don't do things just because you might know that the workings of Amida is there, right? And this chapter 13 is also, it's most famous for the controversial saying where Shinran asked Yu Yenbo, would you do anything that I tell you in order to attain enlightenment? And Yu Yenbo says, of course I would, at which point Shinran says, then go out and kill 1,000 people. And Yu Yen says, well, I'm unable to, even though you say so, I'm unable to kill even a single person. And then Shinran said, well, why did you just say that you would do as I had instructed? And then Shinran goes on to explain about this, saying that, we think we are good people. And without realizing, though, a lot of what we call good and bad is the result of our environment and our past karma. So the past causes and conditions, it makes us who we are. But if we're put in a completely different situation, we might become we may behave differently. And of course, even if we don't want to harm a single being, we might inadvertently be doing a lot of harm to others as well. So what Shinran is saying is that don't get caught up on just our intentions or our thoughts, because even then, when we start thinking, I'm a good person, then we become judgmental of others and say, so and so is a bad person, and I'm equally at fault at that, because I would look at, well, the example that I would use is I would look at Trump and say, how could people vote for him, right? And again, that's me putting myself as the good person and putting Trump as the other. But that's actually also my ignorance, my ego. And Shinran points this out also in this chapter 13 of the Tanisho. But what he does say too, though, is that if we had to eradicate all of our evils before we can actually recite the teachings or the Nembutsu, then there would actually be no need for it. Because if we eradicated all of our impurities, then we would in fact become enlightenment, and there would be no need for us to recite the Nembutsu. So basically what he's trying to say is, we come and what the teachings tell us is, come as we are, with all our faults, with all of our impurities. It doesn't matter. Just come as we are. Listen to the teachings, focus or reflect on life at the moment, and realize that we are in fact a part of a oneness. And don't worry about, have I done this or that? But as we are accepted. And so as we listen to the teachings again, I thank the individual who sent the email to me during the week. And I hope I didn't confuse you more than I clarified things. But I thank you all for, again, joining us on our Sunday service. And next week is actually November 1st, and it will be our Shotsuki Monthly Memorial for November, and I hope that you will join us, and I will talk about something different. But in the meantime, I do really appreciate the emails that I received throughout the week. It does give me fodder for Dharma talks as well. So please feel free to send me emails, ask me questions, and I will think about it, and then perhaps bring it up at the Sunday during the Sunday talk as well. So I'd like to close this morning's service with a recitation of the Nembutsu. So please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, I'm just gonna